Alright, I am back with another Cyberpunk 2077 video. Can't remember the last time I did one of those, but it has been an exceedingly long time because I think it was maybe patch 1.1, which is a patch that did pretty much nothing except break the game, and they had to hotfix it later. Now, we have the full patch notes for 1.2, which CDPR has promised would be a very big patch, and I don't know when it's going live at the time I'm recording this. They said soon, but when you release full patch notes for something, it's usually pretty imminent. So I'm expecting it, honestly, by the end of the day. It could be tomorrow or the next day. So we'll see what happens there. First, we'll start with the good news, and the good news is that they weren't lying. It's a huge patch. Looking over the patch notes is somewhat astonishing. This might be one of the largest lists of patch notes I have ever seen in my life, and I've gone through a lot of these. I counted it's 8,000 words. That's about 10% of a novel, an 80 to 100,000 word novel, and there are, I don't even know how many points there are, several hundred points. I saw the word fixed has been used 240 something times. The phrase no longer does has been used 80 or so times. So it is a very large patch covering a wide range of issues. And it also appears to be going to be out in the interim where they said it would make it out in the second half of March. This was delayed after the hack back in February, where they said they couldn't get the patch out in late February like they originally said, but they do appear to have hit this deadline. Again, maybe it'll be delayed a couple of days, but my guess is it comes out in either before the end of today or in the next day or two. So technically still within March, sliding in just under the wire there. What does it contain? I would say it is 98% specific bug fixes. Like, of these 8,000 words, like almost all of it is just like fix this bug with this quest in this instance, or like fix this clipping issue in this context and whatever. Like you almost can't even read them all. Like if you're having a specific issue with the quest, you should just like Control F and see if you can find it in the patch notes, because like reading through every single one like I have is kind of exhausting. So what this kind of says to me is that a lot of this is going to be for players that are either like literally stuck because they hit a bug, or players that kind of gave up because it was so buggy, or players that are coming with a fresh start. So hopefully they won't have, as many of the bugs that everybody else had right at launch here. For players that are veteran players, or that have already put a certain amount of time into it, there's probably a little less there for them. And this is not like some major quality of life patch. There are some issues that they've addressed here, but they already previewed a couple of them, and like kind of so like if I'm going to go into my Xbox One or Xbox Series X game that I 100% it, I cleared everything. This isn't really adding anything there. Like I already beat the game. They're not adding new content. For my existing games on PC where I haven't had as many issues, like there's bugs and stuff, but I haven't finished that yet. Still, I don't know how much will feel different in kind of moment-to-moment gameplay. There are, she was behind me the whole time. There are some changes that you may feel. One of the publicized, she has a new friend. See, little baby cork friend that she's already chewed the nose off of. So I'm a little skeptical of getting her a puppy to play with. But anyway, so one of the changes they previewed already was improved police AI, except it's not really improved AI. It is police just kind of spawning out of thin air further away from you rather than right on top of you. And we've already seen videos of this in action. It doesn't really look that great. It's like the entire police system needs kind of a total redesign at this point. They said some other AI things are happening where NPCs will like kind of freeze less in terror, and they'll like run away or drive away from you when they're scared, rather than just like freezing in place, which is kind of a comical thing that happened. There are changes to driving. Steering is going to be a little better on certain places, mouse and keyboard, I think especially, and you can like change steering sensitivity. You can get your car unstuck from random objects in the wild by like rocking back and forth. There are just like really, really random notes they like slide in there between like tons of random bug fixes. Gorilla Arms got a 20% damage buff. I think that's the only damage buff I saw for buff or nerf I've seen in there. Well, they did nerf bunny hopping. There was a way you could like kind of bunny hop using the slow-mo skill, and I guess they removed that. really random stuff like you can't use the Gorilla Arms finisher on civilians now. Don't know. I don't know. Who knows? Why do they do anything that they do? There are other, like, one quality of life improvement that is good is you can craft multiple things at a time. So if you're trying to craft a bazillion copies of something, I think that there will be some sort of slider in place. That's a good quality of life fix. I will give them credit for that. Delamain will no longer call you every time you go into a zone with one of his cars. You'll have to be like pretty close to one of his cars. And that's kind of it. Like in this massive sprawling list of patch notes, like in terms of kind of quality of life fixes that you might actually notice within the game that aren't just like this quest is broken, like this animation sucks, like things like that. That's kind of the list that I've come up with, and I've read the whole thing. I've read people's summaries and recaps of what they thought was important. I've written my own, and that's more or less what I came up with. And that's not unexpected. I figured that this patch was going to be mostly about bug fixes because there were so many bug fixes that needed to happen in the game. There are going to be some performance improvements, which could, very well help your current console version of the game or your PC build. They did say it was going to be, the performance stuff was going to be aimed at lower spec systems. So that means both like lower spec PCs and last generation consoles. The obvious undertext of all this is that people don't even realize this, but Cyberpunk has been off the PlayStation Store since a week after release. And it has not been on since. And it's not just like you can't buy the game digitally for PS4. It's you can't buy the game digitally for PS4 and PS5 because it's one version of the game. And Sony has not listed that version of the game, so you cannot get it on any PlayStation console. And like we have literally seen console sales actively drop the past few months for Cyberpunk because you cannot digitally download it at all on one system. So clearly a main goal of this patch was to get Sony to relent and let it back on. I assuming everything works as they say it will, I don't know what would be preventing Sony from putting it back on the store now, short of just having a grudge because CDPR kind of screwed them over for having everyone demand refunds, and when they didn't even have a digital refund system and they had to custom make one just for this absurd situation. So we'll see if they actually do it. I imagine Sony wants some time with the patch to go over it and make sure that it does what it says and it doesn't break the game again. I think that's a pretty big risk here because this is a massive patch. I mean, there are so many different fixes. It's almost absurd. And everyone is thinking back to patch 1.1, which was a much, much smaller patch, and yet it introduced a main questline bug that totally broke the game and would essentially freeze progress. So I think we have to wonder what other bugs could have worked themselves into the game with all these other bug fixes. CDPR has not exactly proven that they can flawlessly release both a game or a major patch without issue. So I think everyone needs to kind of wait and see how this goes, and hopefully everything works. But in a patch this big, I would be frankly kind of amazed if X, Y, or Z new serious problem wasn't introduced that has to be hotfixed in short order here. So that's kind of where we're at right now, and we are, I'd say, we're 3 months into the year, and they said free DLC will be out within the first half of the year, according to their very nebulous roadmap. So we have about 3 more months until that happens. So if we're in terms of potential, like actually quality of life stuff, like a reason to come back to the game other than it's not broken anymore, that is going to be further down the line. And I have to believe, like, I know they're going to keep fixing bugs and doing performance improvements when they can and stuff, but this has to be like the biggest patch of that type that they're going to release. Obviously, all of this points to the fact that this game should not have been released at launch, like when it was. Like it was already delayed multiple times. It should have been delayed more times to ensure that this didn't happen. And I give CDPR a really hard time in this situation because it's not just that like they released a buggy game, and like every developer to some extent has released a buggy game and things that don't work at launch, but it has been kind of their behavior since launch where they were actively hiding how the game performed on last gen consoles and flat out just misleading people by saying like, yeah, it works pretty well on last gen consoles. That was the only indication we had ahead of launch as to that's how it works. Even in their apology, I tweeted about this earlier, but I forget the guy's name, but whoever the head of CDPR is is talking about like, yeah, well, unfortunately our testing like didn't show all these bugs that you guys are encountering, so that's why they weren't fixed. And then they release this patch notes that's like 800 bugs that people have fixed in addition to the hundreds they've already fixed. And like, it's just not believable. Like, either you are not telling the truth and you just rushed the game out knowing that there were all these bugs in, or your testing was so poor that you missed so many glaringly obvious bugs. Like, neither of those are really good answers. So I don't think that this gets them off the hook. And like, I appreciate all the work that the employees of CDPR are working to fix this game. I think that is great. That is also kind of the bare minimum when you have sold a game for $60 that people expect to work. And a lot of people literally, I mean, their game is practically bricked with some of these bugs and has been for a while, and they just can't make progress. And it was borderline unplayable on last gen consoles, at least closer to launch. It's still not great now. So I think that's, I don't know how much praise I can really heap on them for, the size of this patch. I know, things have been hard, I'm sure, but it's also like, come on guys, like this is what we expect. And I'm also not, I mean, it's also like not some benevolent thing. Like CDPR really needs to turn Cyberpunk around. They have based their entire structure of their company on alternating Cyberpunk and Witcher releases now. And it is very clear that they desperately want to build some sort of GTA Online adjacent thing out of Night City at some point in the future. So that requires, at baseline, fixing Cyberpunk like as a single player game, adding more content to the single player, and then eventually probably branching into their multiplayer idea that I have to believe they're not going to abandon. And I think they have too much invested in this for this to be like an Anthem, like throw up their hands and walk away situation. Like, no, Cyberpunk is not like a live service game, and we're not expecting like seasonal Cyberpunk updates and whatever, but they have a lot more content planned, clearly. Like, just, look at the tail end of The Witcher with its free DLC and its two massive, highly praised, paid DLCs, and then add in the fact that Cyberpunk wants to do an online thing. And like, you can see that like they have to make this work. And this is probably the biggest step towards making that happen, just fundamentally fixing what was broken with the main game. Still do not know how many things will be left unfixed. I saw that so many different Cyberpunk like perks don't work, like your skill perks and things just don't straight up work, and I didn't see fixes for anything like that in the game. There's no balancing, no AI. I think I saw like some AI enemies will do less revolver damage. Like, it's really minor things when it's like, we need dramatic overhauls in like so many areas of this game, like traffic AI, combat AI, like just quality of life issues with, you can't even go to a tattoo parlor or get your hair cut. Like, just so many basic things that the game is fundamentally missing, that it's got to do a lot more than just kind of patching the holes. And it's going to be a long process, but like, it's the joke of like, okay, well, maybe a year and a half from now, like this will be the game it was supposed to be at launch. And that might be true. Like, that is literally, like, that's not even a joke. Like, that is probably what's going to happen at this point. And I have to believe a lot of the free DLC, I have to believe some of that is content that was either cut or not finished in time for the final release. If these early hints kind of pan out, a lot of it is like literally quality of life features the game needs that just didn't launch with it. So I'm hoping that, that seems like the moment where if they release a bunch of free DLC, that would be the moment to like really return and play to the game. If you have put some time into it already and are just looking to get back to it, it could be time to play now. If this is if you got stuck on some bug and couldn't progress, I don't know if I can recommend the game to like new players yet. Like, we don't know how this patch is going to work fundamentally, and if it might create new issues. But past that, like, again, like, I don't see a reason to not continue waiting, especially if you're on console, to the Xbox Series X and PS5 next gen version of it, which will be out allegedly in the second half of the year. If you're going to do a first playthrough, if you've skipped it through all this drama, that seems like a good jumping off point, because hopefully by then it will have fixed a bunch of stuff, and a lot of this free DLC, if not all of it, will be out, which will hopefully add a lot of quality of life stuff. So I'm going to do a separate video once this patch goes live, either today or tomorrow or whenever that happens, and play it and see if I can really tell any difference. I'm probably going to play, I have 2 unfinished characters on PC, and I have my finished character on Series X, so I'm going to play through that and see if I can tell a difference. I guess get some cops to chase me and see how that feels. I don't know. But for now, I just wanted to kind of go over the meat of the patch notes, because it is just massive, and there's obviously a lot to talk about just from that. But Thanks for watching. We'll see how many more Cyberpunk videos I get to. It's about to be Outriders season here, so you will see a lot of those, especially as Destiny seems to be cooling off for at least a couple weeks here. But obviously, I'm still going to write daily Destiny articles, so you can see those. But Evie, you want to say goodbye? Nope. Is that the wrong? I always go the wrong way. Okay. She's. Oh, do you want to? You're bringing her to see Baby Yoda? Okay. Well, that's her little family. All right. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't subscribed to my newsletter, God Rolls, the link is in the bio, in the description here. And thank you for everyone that has. I've had a great response to that, and I've had a lot of fun doing it. Exclusive EV photos and a roundup of videos and stuff and articles I write. So, all right, thanks for watching, and I hope this patch goes live soon. See ya.